All right, let's jump right in. We're going to tackle a massive question today. Where does meaning actually come from? Now, we all think we know what words mean, but there's this really fascinating theory called inferentialism that says it all works kind of like a game with a very specific set of rules. So let's get into it. So, to get us started, I want you to think about a super simple, everyday word. The word and. I mean, how would you define it? You use it all the time, but if someone asks you to explain what it is, well, it's a lot trickier than you'd think. And this really gets to the heart of the problem. You see, for a word like apple, meaning feels pretty straightforward. You can point to the fruit, right? There's a real thing in the world it connects to. But what do you point to for the word and, or if, or not? You can't. There's nothing there. These words don't point to things. They do things. Okay, so if pointing at things is out, where does that leave us? This brings us to the core answer of this whole explainer. Maybe meaning isn't what a word points to, but what a word does. It's about its function. This really powerful idea comes from the philosopher Ludwig Wittgenstein. He just flat out said that to understand a word, you have to understand the job it does in our language, how we actually use it. And that simple sentence completely changes the game. And this is where our main topic, inferentialism, comes onto the scene. It takes Wittgenstein's big idea and builds an entire system around it. The meaning of a word, especially a logical word like and, is literally defined by the rules for using it. It's all about what conclusions or inferences you're allowed to make when that word shows up. The best way to get your head around this is to think about chess. What makes a rook a rook? It's not the piece of wood or plastic it's made from, right? The meaning of the rook is its rules, the fact that it moves forwards, backwards, and sideways in a straight line. Its identity is its set of allowed moves. Inferentialism says logical words are exactly like that. So if meaning is just a set of rules, what do these rules actually look like? Well, this is where a field called proof-theoretic semantics comes in. It gives us the nuts and bolts, the actual mechanics for how this all works. In this whole system, things basically boil down to two types of rules. First, you've got introduction rules, or I rules. These tell you how you can legitimately build a sentence using a logical word. They literally define its meaning. And then you have elimination rules, or E rules, which tell you what you can get out of a sentence once that word is in it. Let's go back to our old friend, the word and see how this plays out. The introduction rule for and is just beautifully simple. If you can prove statement A is true, and you can also prove statement B is true, well then you are officially allowed to introduce and conclude A and B. That's it. That rule is what and means. Now, this all seems really elegant, but it probably has you wondering, hang on a second, if meaning is just a set of rules we've made up, what stops us from making up completely ridiculous, nonsensical rules and calling it logic? Well, you're not the first to ask that. A philosopher named Arthur Prior actually decided to test that very idea. He invented a brand new logical operator, and he called it tonk. And tonk is the perfect cautionary tale for why we can't just make up any old rules we want. Okay, so check out these rules. They look simple, right? The introduction rule says if you have A, you can just go ahead and infer A tonk B for any B you can possibly imagine. Then the elimination rule says if you have A tonk B, you can then infer B. Do you see the problem yet? With tonk, you can start with any true statement you like, say the sky is blue, and then use these rules to end up proving absolutely anything else, like the moon is made of cheese. It's a system breaker. It's logical chaos. It proves that not just any rule will do. So what we need is some quality control. And that check comes in the form of this really beautiful principle called harmony. Harmony says that the introduction and elimination rules have to be perfectly balanced. The E rule can't let you get more out of a statement than the I rule requires you to put in. Tonk fails this test spectacularly. Now, as powerful and clean as this theory is, I have to be honest. Like any big idea in philosophy, it's not without its problems. In fact, there are some pretty fierce debates going on about it. And we're not talking about small details here. These are deep challenges. For example, some of the totally standard rules in classical logic, the logic we all learn and use, don't seem to satisfy this strict harmony condition, which is a big deal. Defining a word that seems as simple as not also turns out to be incredibly difficult within these rule-based limits. And then you get these even deeper questions, like how do we justify the most primitive rules?
without just going in a circle. It's a real puzzle.
So at this point, you might be thinking, okay, this is some pretty abstract theoretical stuff. And you're not wrong. But what's so cool is how these ideas have actually had a huge impact way outside of philosophy classrooms.
This whole meaning is use approach has turned out to be a super fruitful way of thinking. It's used to design new kinds of logics that better capture how our actual natural language works. Linguists use it to figure out tricky, context-dependent words. And get this, it even has huge applications in computer science through something called substructural logics. This allows you to treat a statement like a resource that gets used up, which is a really powerful concept for modeling how computer programs work. This stuff is a real toolkit. So, if you only take one thing away from all of this, let it be this. Meaning doesn't have to be a simple label we stick on things out in the world. It can be this intricate, invisible web of rules, roles, and relationships, a system of inferences that we all somehow agree to follow. And that leaves us with one last, really fascinating question to chew on. If our entire ability to communicate and understand each other relies on playing by a shared set of rules, what does that mean when we have those really deep, fundamental disagreements? When we argue, are we just talking about different facts, or are we actually just using different rulebooks for our words? It kind of suggests that maybe our arguments are about more than just what's true. They might be about the very meaning of the words we're using. Something to think about. Thanks for tuning in.